the meeting, and we are going to post the recording and the presentation materials on the website after the meeting. Just give us a couple days, especially on the recording. It takes a little bit of time for us to get that up there. So let's go ahead and get started with some introductions. I'm Karen Franklin. I'm the project manager from the town of Leesburg for this project. Also presenting will be Christy Fergale from WSP. She's the project manager for our design team. Also with us from the town project team is Renee LaFollette. Renee, maybe you could say something so you'll pop up on their screen if you're on.
Renee, Karen works for me.
Yeah, there she is. And Sarah Biggs, she's one of our project managers. She's acting as host tonight.
Hi.
And then we also have some other members of the WSP design team who are going to be available to help answer questions at the end of the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. So I just want to go over real quick what our meeting topics are tonight. We're going to go through the background. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background in case you haven't made the other meeting. I'm going to review the input that we received from the April 2021 neighborhood meeting. We'll present the 60% plan design and updates. I'm going to go over some next steps, and then we'll have time for resident comments and questions. So real quick, the project is widening Evergreen Mill Road from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. The original project started at South King Street and ended at Battlefield Parkway. That's what you see in the red. During the concept design, the project scope was extended to the frontage in front of Heritage High School. That's shown in yellow. So the total length of the project is 1.3 miles. And it is interesting and useful to note that we have 3 schools and a park on this corridor. So the goals of the project were to improve traffic flow on Evergreen Mill Road, reduce congestion at the high school entrance, improve safety at the intersection with Battlefield Parkway, and improve pedestrian and bicycle connectivity and safety. So we did hold a public meeting April of 2021, and we got some really good questions and input from you all, and I just wanted to summarize the main issues that were brought up. You expressed concerns about safety and speeding on the corridor. We had some questions regarding property impacts. There was a desire for safe pedestrian connectivity, including suggestions for a new crosswalk. We were asked if there would be any new traffic lights added, and we were asked if overhead utility lines could be placed underground. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Christy, who's going to give you an update on what's changed since the 30% plans and how we've tried to respond to some of those concerns we heard. Christy?
Thanks, Karen. And just so everyone knows, we're going to keep our videos off while I'm presenting my screen just because it tends to slow things down a little bit, but we'll pop them back on at the end. So, all right, before we start getting too far into the questions that you posed, I figured I'd do just a quick refresher. It actually has been a whole year since we last met. And don't worry, I don't expect you to read everything on my screen right now. We are going to be posting this on the website so you can review it at your convenience and send us any specific comments. We're progressing now towards our 90% submittal in just a few months, so it's really the optimal time to incorporate your input, and we really look forward to your comments. So as far as the scope for this project, we're going to be widening from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, and it starts at Heritage High School, goes north about 1.3 miles to South King Street. You can kind of see in the yellow highlighted areas, that's where the widening is going to be mostly on the northbound side, which is on the bottom part of the graphic. And we're also going to be doing some signal timing optimizations that will help you get through the corridor a little bit quicker. We're going to be addressing multimodal connectivity and pedestrian safety. We're going to be adding a trail on the east side where there isn't one today. So today there is a trail, but it stops a little bit after the middle school before Alpine Drive. So we're going to be extending that all the way up to South King Street. And on the opposite side, we're going to be doing the same thing with the sidewalk, which actually ends a little bit after the elementary school. We're going to be extending that also up to South King Street for some additional connectivity. We're going to be doing some ADA upgrades, fixing some of the curb ramps and slopes. We're also going to be converting shoulder to curb and gutter to make it a little more consistent with the urban section throughout the town. As you know, pedestrian safety is a really important aspect of this project. As Karen mentioned, we've got schools and parks, so we're definitely focusing on that. We'll also be doing some pavement reconstruction. Some of the areas with deteriorating pavement, we'll be fixing that up. And then along with that, we'll be doing some stormwater management. We have 5 different facilities, both above ground and below ground, as part of this project. Okay, so last meeting, we walked you through the whole project from south to north, and then we figured for this meeting, we're going to focus more on what has changed since the last time we spoke and what we did to address some of the concerns we heard. So the first change entails reducing the lanes from 12 feet down to 11 feet throughout the whole project. And this is pretty significant from a design standpoint. It addresses your concerns regarding safety and speeding, as well as just some general concerns we heard about the project footprint. And just a little bit of history on this. So the original project was scoped quite a few years ago now. And we realized there was, quite a few impacts along the corridor, and then the project team pushed to reduce the footprint, and we received approval to reduce the turn lanes down to 11 feet. And while that helped, after our last meeting, we went back to the drawing board, met with the town, coordinated with VDOT, and we actually obtained concurrence to narrow all the lanes down to 11 foot wide. So that's what you're seeing here is all 11-foot lanes throughout the corridor. And I know it doesn't sound like much at first, but when you count up the lanes, you look at the turn lanes, and you realize, that's 6 feet or more of savings in your front yard. So it really is quite a big deal. Not only does it reduce the impacts of the footprint, but it also reduces environmental impacts, it reduces stormwater management and runoff. So all these things, they really add up. So another big benefit of the 11-foot lanes is that it acts as a natural traffic calming. I mean, you don't go out there and build like a super highway with huge comfy lanes and then tell drivers, nope, you can only go 35. I mean, that's not going to fly. So the narrower lanes, it naturally causes drivers to slow down because it's a little bit tighter out there. And then these slowing drivers actually reduces in fewer and less severe crashes as well. So there's a double benefit there. The reduced lane widths actually also increase pedestrian safety because the crosswalks become a little bit shorter. So you can picture, you're crossing 6 foot less of pavement, so you can get across the road quicker, which means there's less chance for a conflict. So in addition to these roadway changes, we also reduced the trail buffer, which is kind of where I'm circling with my mouse right now. It's the area between the trail and then the roadway. So we reduced that from a standard 8 foot down to 6 foot in a couple areas where it was especially constrained. So that actually saved us, a couple more feet as well. So I guess the bottom line is that just the project team is working real hard behind the scenes just to find ways to optimize this project without, obviously compromising on safety or limiting capacity. All right, so another question that came up during our first comment period was, are you going to add any new signals? So to further evaluate this, we conducted a signal warrant study at both Wallace Drive and Alpine Drive. And so what a signal warrant is that you do a study and it's based on the traffic volumes during peak times as well as, throughout the day. And it takes into account the delays experienced at the stop signs, the number of lanes on each approach, if there have been crashes at that intersection, and just numerous other key factors which help determine if a signal is indeed warranted at a particular intersection. So we did that. And the results were that at Alpine, it was not warranted now, it wasn't warranted in the opening year or the future design year of 2045. So that one was out. When we checked Wallace, while it wasn't warranted in the opening year, it might be warranted in the future design year in 2045. So while that was great information, we decided at this time it's not going to be part of the project, but it might be something that the town revisits at a later date. So we also received comments about adding another potential crosswalk across Evergreen. And so this was also further evaluated, and we looked into 2 options. One was a crossing at Alpine, and the other was a crossing at Wallace. And it was decided that Wallace Drive was the best location for this new crosswalk and that we would implement that into the plans. You can see it here in the graphic. And so some of the reasoning behind that was that it took into account the results of the signal warrant that I was just mentioning. So, if one day there is a signal here, this would be the ideal location to put that crosswalk. The other advantage, actually the main advantage of this, was that at this location we have a raised median. And so what that does for us is it creates an area where we can carve out a pedestrian refuge. And so if you can see where my mouse is now, that just provides a safe spot in case someone can't, doesn't want to get all the way across the road, they can stop in the middle and be protected. And why that wasn't possible at Alpine is that we have driveways on the opposite side of the road at Alpine. So you can picture if you're putting in a raised median there, those driveways, they won't be able to turn out left from their driveways. It kind of reduces their access, and we definitely didn't want to do that. So this was the location where we could fit that pedestrian refuge, which was a really important safety consideration. A couple other considerations were that this location, it's spaced farther away from the existing signalized crossing at Tolbert. It kind of splits the difference between Tolbert and then the crossing at South King. And then we did just want to mention that while it's not ideal to put a crosswalk in the, a curved geometry, we did check the site distance. There's around 300 feet that's required for this speed, and we definitely met that. We had more like 400 or 500 feet, so that wasn't a concern. Okay, so the next topic I wanted to cover is about the upgrades to some of the areas with substandard pavement. This has been a change since we last spoke. So we have conducted some geotechnical field work, and we discovered that there are numerous areas throughout the corridor with substandard pavement. Originally, we were just planning to give the corridor a little bit of a facelift with an overlay, but now there's just a few areas that are going to be completely reconstructed. So I'm showing an example here between Wallace and South King. This is one of those areas. This is the biggest one. And you can see some of the issues with maintenance issues. We have a lot of alligator cracking out there. The roadway, I think, was built way back in the 70s, so it's not really a surprise that there are some issues out there. So we'll be fixing it up. We'll get you a much longer design life, but on the downside, it will have a few cost implications and schedule impacts. All right, so another item I just wanted to quickly touch on was the driveway aprons. I don't believe we've actually received any direct questions on this, but we're just applying some lesson learned from other projects and just kind of taking a proactive approach with this one. The town standard is actually a 16 to 18 foot wide apron, and we're going to go ahead and widen that to about 20 feet. We just figure that, that's going to give you a little bit easier access turning in and out of the driveways once the curb and gutter is added. Just wanted to bring that up. All right, so now we're going to move along to some quick updates on all the stormwater management. I'm just going to cover each one at a high level, but if you have any specific questions, you can feel free to raise your hand at the end during the Q&A, and we can answer those questions. So our first facility, it's a pond located near English U, across from the high school. So the changes with this one is that it was originally a little bit closer to Evergreen Mill Road. We discovered there was some new communications lines that were just put in there, and then there's also the overhead lines. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't have any conflicts being under the line, so we pushed it back just a little bit, but it's still on the same open space parcel here. Not too many changes. Okay, and then the next facility we have here, it's a small one, and it's on this sliver of town-owned right-of-way on the corner of Battlefield Parkway across from Freedom Park. So originally this was a surface pond, and then when we started to get into the design details, we realized the grading might encroach a little bit over the property line. So we made the call to put this one underground just to make sure we could stay within the right-of-way. Okay, and then the next one, Stormwater Management 3, is located on Evergreen Elementary School property. So this one was originally also situated closer to Evergreen Mill Road. And then as we got into the design, we determined that there was an old pond in the back of the property outlined by this blue line here. And we actually figured out that we could potentially retrofit that to handle the water from our project as well. So we met with Loudoun County Public Schools and the town and showed them a few options. And, sure enough, there was no surprises there that the school would rather have, one pond rather than two ponds on their property. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with updating the design with the new pond retrofit. Okay, and so the next facility, this is located in the open space parcel near Wallace Drive, near Evergreen Meadows subdivision. Not too many changes with this one. It's basically the same. We optimized it a little bit to avoid some of the utility poles in the back, but other than that, basically the same. Okay, And then the final one here, this is an underground facility as you approach South King Street. It's located on the town-owned parcel, which actually used to be the old pump station. This is an underground facility because we were trying to keep it right on the square that the town owns. Not too many changes with this one. We kind of changed the design approach a little bit to reduce the size and depth because we found out there was some, some rock that was deep underground here, as well as just to get it a little bit shallower for maintenance purposes. So that was the only change there. So that's all of our stormwater management. But then there's one more thing I just wanted to cover quickly because it was a comment that we received after the last meeting. So I wanted to touch on that. And it was about potentially undergrounding utilities along this corridor. So we did look into it, and a rough order of magnitude cost to do this would be around $10 million. This doesn't even include the design costs for the duct bank or the cost to individual property owners. So what happens is that if we put everything underground on the road, it still needs to tie into your house. So you might have to do some trenching to get to your house. And then what happens when it gets to your house underground? Well, maybe your access is not at ground level. So you would need to change your panel inside of your house. Otherwise, you would need a pole. So we would basically put everything underground, and then you would have a pole in everyone's front yards anyway to put it above ground to tie into the houses. So that kind of, ruins some of the benefits there. So we took into account all of these different aspects and decided, it's not within the scope or the budget of this project. Okay, and then with that, I'm going to hand it back to Karen to sum it all up.
All right, thank you, Christy. So just to summarize really quick what Christy went over, we've reduced the project footprint by reducing the lane width from 12 feet to 11 feet and reducing the trail buffer from 8 to 6 in some areas. We've improved safety by adding the new crosswalk at Wallace Drive, and we also feel like the 11-foot lanes will help to reduce the speed by offering some traffic calming. We've modified the driveway entrances to better match existing. They're not going to be exact, but it's a little wider than the standard would be. We've upgraded the substandard pavement, updated the stormwater management facilities, and we have determined that undergrounding of facilities is not supported by the project. So the project completion schedule hasn't changed much from what I presented to you guys last year. This summer, we're going to complete the 90% plans, and those will be under review, and we'll be starting to revise the plans based on review comments this fall and into the winter. In the winter spring, we're going to finish the 100% plans and start the right-of-way acquisitions. That's winter spring of 2023. Spring summer of 2023, we'll be starting the utility relocations out in the field. And it's going to take a while to get those done. We expect to finish those in summer, fall of 2024. And then that fall, winter, we're going to be going through the bidding process for this project, which does take some time. We've got to develop all the documents, bid it, receive the bids, and then go to council and get approval. The goal will be to be ready to start construction as soon as the weather breaks in the spring of 2025 to finish the completion of the construction by December of 2026. So that concludes our formal presentation. We'll be posting the presentation materials, including the exhibits that you can zoom in on and see more closely what's going on in front of the area that you might be in. And we'll put the recording up as soon as we can. That may take a couple more days. We do encourage you to sign up to receive project updates on the website. If you haven't done that already, you can get updates via email. And because this is an online meeting, we don't have the opportunity to meet individually with you guys to talk about specific property questions. So we ask you to limit your questions to the broader topics of interest to all participants, and then contact me directly with any specific property questions. Once we get those 90% plans done, I think we'll be in a better position to start really talking to you guys about those specific property issues. And my contact information is up there on the screen for you. So we'll try to give everybody a chance to speak, but we will finish by 9. I think we'll be able to do that with the number of people we have. But if you don't get your question answered, please follow up with me directly. So you can go ahead and type a question in the Q&A box if you want, and we'll answer those. Or you can raise your hand. There's a couple different ways to do that. So depending on what you're using for computer, maybe hover over your name, and you may get a little hand icon pop up, and you can click on that hand icon. And we'll also, if somebody's called in, we'll give you a chance. We'll try to unmute you and give you a chance to speak. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to see if we have any questions. Sarah?
All right, I don't see any hands raised, but we do have Yasmin asked, will the speed limit remain at 35 miles an hour in this area?
Yes, it will. We are designing the road to 45 miles per hour, 40 miles per hour, which is
40.
what we're required to do, but the speed limit will remain at 35 miles per hour. Anybody else?
No questions yet.
I guess we did a good job of explaining.
Well,
What's
Paul Hoffman
changed?
did say very straightforward explanation, much appreciated. So,
Well, thank you. I'm glad
Paul.
you found it helpful.
Maybe we can give people a sec to play around with their computers. Maybe they're
Having
fiddling with
trouble
the hand raising.
trying to type something in. So no, I'm seeing the question there, Sarah, from Yasmin. Will the speed limit increase from 35 mile per hour to 40? No, it will stay at 35 mile per hour. We have to design the road to 40 mile per hour. It needs to be 5 mile per hour above the speed limit, but the speed limit will remain at 35 mile per hour. That's what it is now.
yeah, please make sure that if you're asking a question in the Q&A that you have it sent to all panelists to make sure that we all see it.
And I know one of the questions that was asked in our previous meeting was whether a crosswalk could be put in the area of the elementary middle school area. And we did go to Loudoun County Public Schools and ask that question. And they specifically requested that a crosswalk not be put in that area because there's too much traffic for the age of the students in that area.
Right, we had a couple more questions come in. Serini Vasa asked, can you explain relocating utilities means?
Yeah, so we've got poles that are pretty close to the edge of the road right now along the corridor. And some of those are going to have to be relocated back away from the road, or we may have to put a pole in, say, right next to the existing pole because we're changing the elevation. We also have some underground utilities that are in conflict with the new stormwater that we're putting underground that we're going to have to ask the utility companies to relocate. Christy, you want to get in any more specifics on that?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah, you covered it pretty well. We won't be undergrounding. That was the other thing that we mentioned. And that just means taking the overhead electric and communications and putting them into a big duct bank. We won't be doing that, but we will be doing, like Karen mentioned, moving some poles a little bit and adding storm sewer pipe and adjustments. Yeah.
We have Nicholas. You mentioned a pedestrian study, but it was not deemed warranted by Evergreen Mill and Simpson. Those would be the elementary and the middle schools.
I think that kind of ties back to what Renee was just mentioning about how we spoke with Loudoun County Public Schools and they were actually not in favor of a crossing right near the schools. They said that they wanted to maintain Tolbert at the signalized intersection. So they didn't prefer Alpine. That was actually probably something else I should have mentioned in that slide.
All right, and we have Mandy with, we live a couple houses down from the synagogue. What impact will that be to our property?
Yeah, and that's one of those specific questions which I'd rather talk to you offline from this format, if that's okay, if you can contact me. Christy, maybe put the slide back up there with my contact information. Reach out to me directly and I'll bring Keith into the loop. He's our land acquisition specialist and we'll be able to talk to you specifically about your property.
And I'll just add, if you're south of the synagogue, our project's already terminated before then. I'm not sure where near the synagogue you are, but if you're back here, yeah, we're not going that far. But let me put up your contact information, Karen. Oh, there you go.
Great. And we have Kelly, will the trail extend south to the synagogue?
So it's going to be a sidewalk on the synagogue side of the road. And right now we're showing it going to as far as English U. And it's going to end at English U because there's nowhere else for it to go after that. So right now that's our plan.
Right, and we do have the trail on the opposite side of the road. So we'll have a crossing at English U, and you can hop on the trail if you want.
Karen, and the trail goes all the way down to the furthest property line of Heritage High School, correct?
Yes, it goes to that second intersection, the second entrance. Yep.
We have Yasmin again. Will there be any landscaping done on the north side of where the sidewalks will be added? Being a resident on the southeast side, I would just like to gain a better understanding of what view the residents will be seeing in addition to the road widening and crosswalks added.
Christy, I'll give this one to you.
Yeah, sure. Let me just flip back to the screen so we can all see. Okay, so landscaping done on the north side where the sidewalks will be added. Okay, so what's going on the north side is, yeah, we're basically just adding the sidewalks like you mentioned. We're not really doing much widening at all on that on the north side, the top of the screen. But if we are impacting trees, we're going to be doing some grading and we're going to be adding that sidewalk so that will have tree impacts. And if that's the case, then we will be either planting, new trees. The town will contact you regarding that. And then if there, for some reason, we can't plant new trees, then there's an option to also donate into the tree bank. So I don't know if Karen or Renee, if you wanted to touch on the tree bank at all, but.
Yeah,
I can
Go
take
ahead,
that one. Right now, the Capital Projects Division has a tree policy. So when we remove trees as part of our construction projects, we are required to plant back a certain number of trees. And if we can't plant them back within the footprint of our project, we're required to make a payment to the tree bank. So when we get to the point of knowing exactly how many trees we're going to be removing, we will be looking for how we can put those into the project. And there may be an opportunity for residents if they would like a tree in their front yard along the property line of the project, that we may be able to plant a tree or two for you to help with that process. But until we get a little bit further into the design and know exactly how many trees we're taking out, what the quality of trees are, we don't have a calculation for that number of trees yet.
And that will be part of our 90% design. We've actually been out there and we've tallied up every tree within the limits of this project. So we are assessing the health and which ones will be impacted. So we should know that soon.
All right, any other questions?
I see no hands raised, and I don't see any more questions coming in right now.
Okay. All right, well, thank you all for your time tonight. We appreciate it. It's helpful to keep you guys informed on what's going on. So we want to make sure you know what's going on. So like I said, there's my contact information. So reach out to me. Once we get into finalizing the 90% plans, we'll be in a better position to talk about specific property impacts, etc. So look for that. That'll probably be summer or fallish. We'll be in position to talk to you better. So reach out to me and I'll follow up. Thank you everybody for your time tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Look forward to receiving your questions.
All right,
All
I
right,
expelled
everybody-
everyone.
Everybody's gone.
Thank you, Sarah.